going to ask, I'm going to give you a few housekeeping items. So just one, this is a pretty casual Zoom platform today. So it's not a webinar, everyone can be seen. So we ask that if you could please mute your lines, your microphones, things like that while the presenters are speaking, just so we can all hear one another. But feel free to engage however. So put your questions in the chat, raise your hand, your emoji, things like that, because it looks like we're going to have a really, really awesome family conversation today. So this is good. It's actually going to be a pretty much of a master class. I'm going to tell you right now, because the experts that we've assembled is quite impressive. I was just sharing before that I must be a pretty dope person because I know so many dope people. So I like to say birds of the feather flock together. And then last thing is, if you will join us on social media, we love Twitter, we love Facebook. So please feel free to use these hashtags and join the conversation on social media.
Is that LinkedIn as well?
LinkedIn as well. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right. So first up, I'm not going to read the entire bios. I hope you all have received the program agenda. Sharon Bingo, if you could please attach the program agenda in the chat room. And so today we are so honored to be joined by 4 amazing statewide advocates and experts in the room. And we're going to have a conversation over the range of the infant formula shortage to childcare to what exists for our families and the people that we serve around legal help. So we want to have that really deep conversations. How do we protect people and our families with disabilities? So to get into it, we're going to first hear from Ms. Susan Cho, who is the Executive Director of the Ohio Legal Help. Followed by that is Ms. Tracy Craig, who is a strategic communicator and marketing for Empowering Reach Out eDiversity News, which was created by the Ohio Development Disabilities Council. Next in the lineup is a rock star here in Ohio, Ms. Hope Lane Gavin, who is a fellow at the Center for Community Solutions. And bringing up the end is going to give us a really powerful conversation about childcare is Ms. Erin Ryan, the Director of Policy Advocacy and External Affairs at Groundwork Ohio. So at this time, I would like to bring up Ms. Susan Cho.
Okay, so I run a technology nonprofit. Let's see if I can handle this. So hi, I'm Susan. I'm the Executive Director of Ohio Legal Help. We are a technology platform that provides essentially legal help on your phone for right now about 80,000 visitors a month that come to our site. So I have 5 minutes, and instead of a slideshow, I'm going to show you a quick video and then show you a really quick demonstration. I hope that's pertinent to you folks. So this is the technology part. Let's see if I can share the video appropriately. Okay. And then, oops, sorry. Got to do that again. This is where, yep. So I have to go to share screen. I have to share the sound.
Ohio Legal Help is a secure, trusted website that helps hundreds of thousands of Ohioans navigate their legal challenges. This video will show you how to use the Ohio Legal Help website, whether that is from your phone or computer. Let's say, for example, you have a family issue. You can click on the family card and answer a few questions to help us direct you to the right information for you. Once you are on the page, read through Understanding the Basics for step-by-step legal information and what action you can take. Next, look at Forms and Letters to see what forms might help with your legal issue. You can create an account through the MyOLH User Hub, which allows you to find, save, and complete court forms on your own schedule. Lastly, if you have more questions or think you need to speak with a lawyer or other community advocate, go to Legal Help and Lawyers or Local Government and Community Resources for more help. Get started with resolving your legal issue today at www.ohiolegalhelp.org.
All right. So I'm going to give you, I hope, was there sound for that? So I want to make sure. Thank you. Diana's shaking her head. She's so proud of me right now. And then, so I'm going to give you a little bit more background, then I'm going to do the quickest demo I have ever done in my life. So we launched in September of 2019. We are at this point about 2.5 years old. I always say, if you want a challenge, launch a tech nonprofit startup during a pandemic. But anyways, we're a team of about 5 full-time folks. We work with contract folks, but really it's the core team of 5. And right now we have 80,000 visitors on the site each month. We've served over 1.2 million Ohio families since we launched in 2019. And we basically provide connections to local resources. So we do referrals. Last year, we did about almost 150,000 referrals to local geo-curated connections to local resources, including legal resources, but also to social services agencies. But really what we are is we focus on issues that impact low-income families and how we can help them connect or resolve their legal issues. And so with that, I'm going to show you what is unfortunately right now one of our most accessed resource areas on our site. Okay, so I showed the video. All right, so everyone's seen the homepage at this point, and so this is what I'm showing you and what folks probably think about when they think about a website. But really, when you're surfing the web, you're on your phone. So I'm going to give you a phone demonstration, because actually about 70%, over 70% of the folks that experience our site are on their mobile phone. So I'm going to show you right now where most folks, unfortunately, are accessing information. So a lot of folks obviously accessing family. That's what we focused on the video, because right now in a TurboTax fashion, plain language guided interview, you can complete an entire divorce packet, which you can then save to your account and print out at court and file. We do the Uniform Domestic Relations forms in a mobile first format. But right now, evictions are our #1 issue over the last 3 months. So what you'll see here is what folks experience when they're on our site. So again, plain language, my landlord's trying to evict me. You folks know who are in the housing area that there's difference in rights between public and subsidized housing and, let's say, private. So we have to ask this question. Most folks are going to be no, because we all know that there's shortage of affordable housing, vouchers, etc. And then because mobile home parks are really homes on wheels that aren't too mobile, folks get a little bit more rights and they live in a mobile home park. So we need to know that. But again, majority of folks, private, either single family or multifamily housing. Folks are from Ohio, so you know how big home rule here is. And so I need to know the county in which you live. I'm going to go ahead and put Franklin, and then it's Franklin County. We'll also need to know city. So I'm going to go ahead and geo-curate to Columbus. And then we want to know a little bit more information about you. But by the way, all of this, we believe in user agency. So folks can skip any of this and get to the information they want. But if they give us a little bit of more means tested information, we can better curate the resources for them. This is all geared to federal poverty level. When we asked users their preference in terms of giving us income or giving us a range, they said their preference was a range. So what I showed you there was a single individual household, federal poverty level, 125% or below. We do ask a little bit more information, whether they're a veteran. They don't have to answer these. A lot of folks will skip this and they'll just want to go ahead and submit. But we know that if, for instance, if you're age 60 or older, you could have access to more resources, potentially veterans. And then if you're at homeless or at risk, we're going to also give you additional resources. But I'm just going to go ahead and submit and see my results. And then what folks will see is basically really critical, important information. You know, when we built this site, folks said, don't give me legalese. I want to know what's important to me. And what folks said was important to them was, how much time do I have? So we try to tell them it takes about 4 to 6 weeks. We try to encourage them to stay in their homes. When the CDC eviction moratorium was active in Ohio, we featured that. Now we feature it because we have to tell them it's over. Because again, there's lots of information on the website, other websites, you know, maybe that haven't been updated. So we need to tell them that it's over. And what we're doing now is we're steering everyone that we can to get help paying your rent. We made 15,000 referrals to emergency rental assistance in 2021 alone. So what we're trying to do is get folks to what we think are critical resources. But we're also going to tell them to contact legal aid. So I'm going to do one quick thing. So if you quickly find their legal aid, all they have to do is go ahead and hit search, and then they get to the legal aid that they need. So in this case, in Adams County, it was sold. And the way that we do that is you click, and we're going to take you to how they want to be requested for assistance. Obviously, Google Maps, everything else is in here. And now I'm going to go back, and then you're on your phone, so you usually hit back. And then I'm going to show you the rest of the page, just like we did in the video. We tell them like basically the basics, how to fight their eviction, what happens if they move out before the hearing, some magic words maybe if they need to request a continuance to get an attorney, because generally continuances, at least the first one, are generally provided for. And then we also give them information about, again, we believe in repetition, how to connect to Legal Aid Society of Columbus. Remember, if you will, I had put that Franklin County, I was in Franklin County. We also give folks to other vetted access resources. So Co-Ohio, for instance, and their housing information line. We have vetted, and we vet every resource. I know who's going to answer these phones because we think that's important, because you folks all know the frustration of individuals who don't have a lot of time, and we need to respect that time. And so we want to make sure they get good vetted resources. We're also going to connect them to the Municipal Court Self-Help Center. We work with all the self-help centers in the state, and obviously emergency rental assistance for Franklin County. I think that's going to geolocate to impact in Franklin County, but we want to make sure that folks get information. So impact is there as well. And then 211, because maybe they need other resources. And then because the public libraries are good partners, and folks go to the public libraries, we want to make sure they're aware of those resources. There aren't any forms and letters associated with this particular topic, but for instance, on the divorce, as you saw, they would connect and get to a form. And again, that TurboTax-like experience. And then I'm going to show you one last thing before I conclude. So we built this specific page just for advocates like yourself, and we'll send this out. Basically, this is all of the probably the most accessed resources on our site. Our site is pretty big, but we want to make sure that folks, can get easily to information. And so we actually built this for advocates, not for our users. What we learned from user testing is these types of lists can be overwhelming. And so that's why we do the triage. That's why we do the little quiz. But what we learned from public librarians and other advocates is they wanted a big old list. And so we went ahead and curated these resources. And so it's basically all the, I would say, core topics on the site, and all our letters and forms, basically all the court forms, everything that we provide on the site. And with that, I'm going to stop. I think that's 5 minutes.
Thank you, Susan. This is, I think I can safely say on behalf of everyone, this is very, very impressive, very comprehensive, exhaustive, and like Hope said, I love the magic words. Sometimes we need additional assistance, and it honors our constituents. It gives them dignity and being able to advocate for themselves. So awesome job, Ohio Legal Help, awesome job. All right, Sister Craig, you're up next.
Hello, and thank you. I was just typing in the chat, but I'll say it out loud. Susan, I couldn't think of a better person to follow, because I love the magic words, as Hope said. And for me, it sounds like the same as with you. It's about empowerment. And so this is a great segue into an introduction for you of the Empowering Reach Out eDiversity News. I will share my screen and make sure that you can see my quick presentation. Whoops, got to share the screen before you click the presentation.
So while we're waiting for Tracy, remember, if you have questions for any of our presenters, please make sure to add them in the chat. Sharon and I will be monitoring the chat so that we can get them out. We do have a few scripted questions because we know we have such a diverse audience. And so we wanted to make sure that we ask a little bit more about demographics. And, when we're stumbling upon challenges, particularly something around the infant formula shortage right now, something that Hope has been dealing with, the housing piece, like Susan said before, is extremely important, as you saw in the demonstration for many of our constituents right now. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Tracy, we're just waiting on you. Go ahead and open your screen.
Are you able to see my screen?
No, ma'am.
You can't see my screen?
No, ma'am.
Oh, goodness. Let me try one more thing.
Okay.
This might work.
Don't forget, Ohio Legal Help just released their annual report, just as impressive as the presentation Susan took us through. So check that out as well. All right, Ms. Tracy, we can see your screen now. And now you just need to unmute. Sister Tracy, if you could just unmute your, here, you want me to? There you go. We can't hear you. We can see your screen, but we can't hear you, Tracy. We still can't. Why don't we do this, Tracy, if you can, how about we take a moment and see if Sharon can upload for us? So stop sharing your screen, Tracy, please. And let Sharon upload for you. Maybe your audio was connected to your presentation somehow.
It is. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. So if
This
you
is
give
a
us
Zoom thing
second,
that happens to me all the time. If I'm sharing, people can't hear me.
that's all right. We Generation Xers. Sometimes we still have problems with technology. It's okay. You're in the same
You're
space.
so right.
So Sharon
And
is
save
going
pulling
to
my son in to help me do this.
no problem, not a problem at all. Again, this was a casual Friday. I'm just so happy that we're in great company. So Sharon got you. We'll go ahead and take it. So you just need to let Sharon know when you want her to advance the next slide.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you so much, Sharon. We'll just start right there on that first page. I want to provide for everyone an introduction to the empowering Reach Out eDiversity News. I am Tracy Craig. I'm an associate of the Outcomes Management Group, which is based in Columbus, Ohio, although I'm sitting in Washington, D.C. I am an associate of OMG, which has had a longstanding relationship with the Ohio Developmental Disabilities Council, and the Empowering Reach Out eDiversity News is their product. So the Outcomes Management Group is a curator for content, and each month we deliver the Empowering Reach Out eDiversity News on behalf of ODDC. If you wouldn't mind, next slide. I want to just quickly break down for you the value of this newsletter to the population that we are serving. This newsletter is really focused on raising awareness about developmental disability and about the disability community. And so the biggest piece for us, as I said earlier, is empowerment, empowering Ohio residents across all 33 counties in the state. This newsletter is one that increases awareness among the readers about issues and best practices in delivering services to the disability community that are culturally competent. We believe, and the founder of this newsletter, Mr. Ken Latham, who passed away at the end of last year, he believed that the disability community was certainly underrepresented and underserved. And when you look at individuals with disabilities who have other components of diversity, it really needs a special focus in terms of empowering those residents. And so we want readers to have more information about issues and best practices in delivering culturally competent services. And we also are looking to increase the number of readers who engage in discussions about services and supports for this community. We are looking to make sure that individuals with disabilities and their constituents, they drive these conversations about how services are delivered. The next piece about this, which is a part of the title, is the reaching out. We are reaching out for individuals with disabilities in underserved and unserved communities. This newsletter creates a channel for interagency collaboration. We are so thrilled to know the Hours Network. I'm happy to have met Yvonne and all the other organizations here, because we really believe that through this newsletter, there's a channel for collaboration across organizations and coordination of services and service delivery. We are also looking with this newsletter to expand access to services and supports, not only for the individuals with disabilities, but also their families. That includes caregivers, that includes various others that deliver services and support their success. So the Empowering Reach Out eDiversity News is what we deliver. Next slide, please. This last slide focuses on the best part for us, which is diversity. And this newsletter truly promotes the power of diversity in all of its forms. This is what we call the diversity wheel. And what's so great about this is it really helps people to conceptualize diversity. As we know, disability is itself a form of diversity. But when it's coupled with various other dimensions that you can see here on the screen, which include education, it includes geography and geographic location, of course, ethnicity, race, marital status, the confluence of those diversity components really called for a newsletter like this. And so we're looking to have as many people as possible have access to the Empowering Reach Out eDiversity news. And so on the next slide, please, we will show you a couple of ways that you can subscribe. One of the ways to join our subscriber list is to actually go to the ODDC website. We've included a link here, so if you have this material, you'll certainly be able to click into their website and there'll be a subscriber link right there for you. It's under news, and you'll see the Empowering Reach Out Diversity news that you can select. Secondly, we have a monthly newsletter, and in every edition, we always include a subscriber button. And my intention was to actually let you see the newsletter on my screen, so I'm a little disappointed. I'm going to figure out how to do that. But in every edition, that's awesome. There you go. Sharon has shown you what the actual eDiversity news looks like. And as you can see at the top of the screen, we have a subscribe button, and it takes you into a quick form where you can enter your information. While we're absolutely, Sharon, you're on point. While we're showing the newsletter, I wanted to just take a quick moment. Sharon, if you wouldn't mind, just click in the body of the newsletter. And this will take you directly into the PDF version of the newsletter. So once you subscribe, you'll receive an email that will look like what Sharon showed you. And clicking anywhere in that email will take you directly to the PDF version. This is the first page of our May edition. And the focus this month is on data. And one of the important things we wanted to do was help people to understand why data is important, particularly for the diverse disability community. And so this month we're talking diversity, and you'll see at the top, Sharon, right in the green circle, there's another subscriber button. So if you have a newsletter and you want to make sure that you're a subscriber, if you receive it from someone else, just click here and we'll get your information. The last piece I will show you, Sharon, if you scroll down just a little bit, we have a feature called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Data Toolkit. And this is an important piece that we're showcasing this year. So OMG has had a relationship with ODDC for multiple years, but we've started this toolkit because we really thought about ways that we could empower readers. And so this first page gives you a hint about what's in our toolkit. And if you click on the yellow box, it will take you deeper into the newsletter directly to the toolkit. And this is a place where every month you'll be able to find resources, trainings, best practices, and discussion around whatever the topic is that we're featuring. So as I mentioned, this month we're talking about data. In the past, we've talked about staff diversity, we've talked about technology. Again, we center our newsletter every month around topics that will really help to ensure that individuals with disabilities have everything that they need. So I will conclude by saying, if you do have our slide deck, there's 3 ways to subscribe, to join our subscriber list. The last one in the slide deck is that the Outcomes Management Group actually created a form, especially for you. So if you click that link, it will take you directly to a form. You can enter your information, and we will know that you came through the Hours Network. So again, I want to thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Sharon, for having my back. You ladies are amazing. And this is a wonderful forum for us to emphasize the importance of disability in our communities. It's an underserved population, and this newsletter through the Ohio Developmental Disabilities Council really makes sure that that population achieves their desired outcomes.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for being with us. As you all can see, just like Ohio Legal Help, I mean, what I am enjoying about the information we're getting thus far is that we can continue to go deeper to make sure that no Ohioan feels like they don't have any rights or resources that are available to them. So when Tracy first shared with us the eDiversity newsletter, Sharon and I was absolutely blown away because it's such a plethora of just deeper and deeper information that we can make sure we get out to our constituents. And of course, thank you, Sharon, for giving us these, Wheel of Fortune, Vanna White energy. We appreciate that. We needed that virtual, to show us exactly where we need to go. So please sign up for the newsletter. Again, the resources are available on the Hours website as well. So please go back and sign up for the newsletter. Now I'm ready to bring up my fellow fur mommy, fur baby mommy, Miss Hope Lane Gavin, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about what Center for Community Solutions does and how she has become a part of the team.
Can you guys see this? I'm not good at this. You can see, okay. All right, so I put together this little PowerPoint for you all. That's me. I am Hope A. Lane Gavin. I'm a Health Equity Fellow here at the Center for Community Solutions. Okay, the next slide isn't working. Let me try this. I'm not good with technology. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I'm not a good millennial. How am I doing this wrong? Is there a button? Okay, there we go. All right, so the Center for Community Solutions is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank. We are based in Cleveland, Ohio, but we have a very small but mighty office here in Columbus where I am sitting. Where there's 4 of us here in Columbus, there's about 20 of my colleagues up in the Cleveland office. We aim to improve health and social and economic conditions through nonpartisan research, policy analysis, communications, and advocacy. You can see there on the right-hand side our current priorities and our current strategic plan, advancing the well-being of older adults, enhancing behavioral health access, improving maternal and infant health, strengthening the health and human service safety net, and supporting sound Medicaid policy. Yes. So who am I? I am, again, Hope A. Lane Gavin. I serve as a Health Equity Fellow with the Center for Community Solutions and lead Community Solutions SNAP and WIC policy work, in addition to being part of our maternal and infant health team. I have a Bachelor's of Arts from Kent State and a master's degree from the George Washington University in DC. And so what does all of this look like? So I know that was a lot of words about advocacy and research and things like that. So I wanted to kind of like really break it down as to what we actually do. So we provide trainings. And so what does that mean? We train people on how the State House works. We train people how to become advocates, the difference between advocacy and lobbying. We train people on how the Medicaid program works, which is incredibly complicated. We do research, we do data requests from state agencies, we work alongside state agencies. We do testimony and lobbying at the State House and on the local level, a little bit of federal lobbying, but not much. So that means we, work alongside legislators, get a bill introduced in the State House, and work alongside those members and members of the committee in which the bill was assigned, having meetings, one-on-one meetings with members, to just gather support for our piece of legislation, and then testifying. And sometimes we're testifying for a bill, sometimes it's against a bill, sometimes we're neutral. We do consulting services. I don't do as much of this, but our research team here at the Center for Community Solutions does. We have had some very large contracts with the Ohio Department of Health, as well as the City of Cleveland, the City of Columbus, Cuyahoga County, a lot of area agencies on aging, around the state. We actually have a couple of out-of-state contracts doing some health equity work with some cancer. It's called the ACCC, the American Center for Cancer. Yeah, the acronyms in the space. I can't get it all straight, but we do a lot of consulting services. We do a lot of focus groups. We do a lot of key informant interviews. We produce a lot of reports. We also have a lot of webinars. So we are very wonky people that dive into. If you ever see a bill, like a piece of legislation, it could be like 60 pages, and we're those people that go through and report about what the 60 pages actually says. We hold a lot of events. We do quarterly HSANs up in Northeast Ohio. A lot of our work is here at the Center for Community Solutions is concentrated in Northeast Ohio. And then the small team here in Columbus, we work on statewide work, but a lot of our work is spread out the Cleveland, Akron area. Including the HSANs that we do. Those are in-person events to introduce the community to a member of the legislature or two to just talk about relevant health and human services in the State House. We do what's called a Medicaid Institute every year. We try to get like a big speaker in the Medicaid space to talk about something relevant. The last one we did was on the topic of midwives. And we had a professor from NYU come and speak about the importance of midwifery and maternal and child health. We do a celebration event every year where we honor members of legislature plus people in the community that have done great work in the space. We do a lot of collaborations. So underneath the Center for Community Solutions, we have what's called COOP, where it's Council on Older Persons. It's a formal council of older adults in Northeast Ohio that kind of work together to advance good policy for older adults. We have what's called Advocates for Ohio's Future, which is a nonprofit health and human service coalition of about 500 health and human service organizations in our state that come together to kind of act as a collective voice on, budget advocacy. They try to organize like testimony. The last thing we need is for different organizations coming to testify and saying completely opposite and different things when we're all working together. Although, there's a house like Cohio, Susan talked about Cohio, Ohio disability rights groups, there's my organization, there's early childhood people, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing. And so the last thing we need is for us to not be on the same page, especially in front of a legislature that's not as friendly as we would like to be on some of our issues. We also have the AIDS Funding Collaborative underneath the Center for Community Solutions. They provide funding for smaller organizations across the state doing HIV and AIDS work. And then we also have the Multi-System Youth Coalition under the Center for Community Solutions. And so the Multi-System Youth Coalition is a group of committed public servants that are working to address the multi-system youth crisis in our state. Just a very quick preview about multi-system youth. This is what it sounds like, youth that are in multiple systems, including the DD system, the youth, I don't want to call it, the juvenile justice system, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought there, but it's the across state agency system when we work together so that their parents don't have to give up the rights to them for them to get help. And so this is just a very quick preview of what we do at the Center for Community Solutions. But I tried to give you guys like a honest look at, because saying that we are advocates is like, what does that mean? So I wanted to provide a little bit more of diving into that. And then my final slide here is some resources that we put out. So we do what's called community fact sheets around the state. And so we do them for each congressional district. We do them for every state house district, both the House and the Senate. And then we also do them for the neighborhoods in the city of Cleveland. We also do the wards in the city of Cleveland. And we do them by the county level. And so these are instrumental for many advocates and many different types of advocacy in our state. So this is just a quick snippet of what these look like. This is a Lee Harvard neighborhood in Cleveland. So you can see like population, age under 18. If down here, obviously it's cut off, but you get how many people are food bank eligible, child poverty rates. We have teen pregnancy rates. And again, this is broken down by specific geographic areas depending on what you actually, if you guys don't mind, I can actually pull up what these can look like. Oh, no. So community fact sheet. So Cleveland wards, Cleveland neighborhoods, federal congressional districts, Ohio legislative districts, Cuyahoga County Council districts. So we create these so that just to help inform advocacy, right? And so I wanted you guys to see what an actual full one looked like. So when you hear someone say, I have the poorest district in the state, it's like, how did they come up with this? And so it's information like this. So you have the labor force participation rate, median household income compared to the rest of the state, families with children living below poverty. So you see this data all in one very concise place. And so this is one of the most famous things that we do at Community Solutions: internet access, access and benefits, public benefits, income. So it's 2 pages front and back. We present these to members of legislature, members of Congress every 2 years. So yeah, so you might know us. If you don't know us, you might know us from these community fact sheets because they're kind of very well known. And then lastly, I wanted to just show you, we do what's called Dear Mayor, and we're going to do Dear Governor, and we do Dear County Executive, where we have people in the community kind of write letters relevant to what they care about. And so this was just a very quick, again, snippet of our Dear Mayor series that we did last year for the Cleveland mayoral race. So yeah, this is just a very quick and dirty is about what Community Solutions does. Yeah, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about us as an organization, but I think Erin's next.
Well, thank you, Hope. Listen, there's so much I can say about the Center for Community Solutions. I've been a policy nerd fan of the center for a very, very long time. And I'm always impressed that the center remains at the very forefront at the beginning of how the trends are changing, how we're shifting in demographics, how we're shifting in, what we're seeing in rural communities versus Appalachian communities. And the center is always on top of it. One of the things I love, the Dear Mayor series, you guys, it was amazing. I learned so much from just reading the letters of others. Although I'm Cleveland born and raised, there's so much that is always happening, and to hold our public officials, elected officials accountable for some of this activity is really, really powerful. So thank you, Hope. We do have a question for you, but I'm gonna ask if we could just hold it until Erin's presentation, and then we can have a wonderful conversation about all 4 organizations. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Erin Ryan, who her organization just hosted a really awesome Family First Advocacy Day a couple of weeks ago. So Erin.
Great, yes, and I've got a video from that event that will just kind of showcase what we do in better ways than I could ever explain. So great. So my name is Erin Ryan, and I am the Director of Policy, Advocacy, and External Affairs at Groundwork Ohio. I am still fairly new here. I've been here for since like mid-April. So this is my first time really presenting publicly about Groundwork, and I wouldn't want it any other place than with ours. I'm familiar with Yvonne and this group from my previous role, so very excited to be here today and to share a little bit more about who we are as an organization and the work that we do. So Groundwork Ohio is a nonpartisan policy, research, and advocacy organization that really focuses on prenatal to 5. Really laying that strong foundation for kids, families, and communities. And we focus around mostly state level policy work that builds healthy futures and economic stability and quality learning for our youngest Ohioans and their families. Hope kind of gave like a really great overview of like, what does that mean as an advocacy organization? I have friends who ask me, what is your job? What do you do? And sometimes I have a really hard time explaining it because it feels a little more abstract than an organization that does direct service work where you can say, we served X number of people. We built X number of, places for people to do work. So for us, it's really about engaging stakeholders, mobilizing families, really working strategically and collaboratively with other folks in this early childhood space, as well as those kind of unlikely partners. So we do a lot of work engaging like the business community around why childcare matters. We engage with local folks at the local level, mostly at the county level. We've done some work with county commissioners around what they can do for early childhood within their local communities. And then we really bring, like Hope talked about, like the data and the research and the facts to back that up. So we do research and really data-driven, evidence-based work to back up those policies. So for today, really talking about how do we advance these quality early learning and healthy futures for kids, prenatal to 5, their parents, their caregivers, and their families and communities through advocacy and communication efforts. So again, I feel like some of this is repetitive because Hope really, again, gave like an overview of like, what is advocacy? And it's really about activity that is done by an individual or a group that aims to shift or change or influence those decisions that are happening across our systems. So for Groundwork Ohio, we really focus primarily at the state legislature, as well as trying to influence the governor and the executive leadership in the state of Ohio. Why do we do this? So I think a lot of this is really about working with those folks who are on the ground, actually, delivering services to kids, whether that's in our health systems, our early education systems, child welfare, all the ways that these institutions and systems are interconnected. And for us, they're providing those services that serve families now, and we're kind of swimming upstream to address why families are facing adversity, why families are having hardships or barriers, because it's not an individual problem. It is a systemic, larger system that is really baked in racism, sexism, all the isms, and the way that these systems are created that don't serve families in the same way, depending on a number of different identities. So we really want to make sure that people's voices are heard on the issues that matter to them. Sometimes Groundwork Ohio is not the group that is like front and center on issues. We really want to make sure that families' voices are being heard, that folks who work on the ground actually providing these services are heard and have power, not just a seat at the table, but power in those decision-making processes. So we educate decision makers, give them a new perspective, give people a seat at the table, give them that power, or try and amplify their power, inspiring others to support the cause. So again, kind of pulling in these unlikely allies or stakeholders whose voices maybe hold more power to some of our lawmakers, and then generating that change. So actually changing policies that change the systems. So, as I talked about, we do mostly state level advocacy. This is a chart that kind of talks through, what does that mean? So we have the State House, which is the Senate and the House of Representatives, but we also engage with the executive branch because we know that state agencies hold a lot of power in how those, services are being actually applied and provided to families. And then we also engage with the governor, who has a lot of power to do things within our state. So some advocacy opportunities, meeting with the legislator, just sharing your story, talking about why this matters, giving them that new perspective, writing a letter to the editor, or writing a letter to, we do some kind of like action alerts of like a letter writing campaign, mostly around the state budget process, providing testimony in person, or getting other folks to provide testimony, kind of, again, amplifying the voices of others. We use social media as a tool to really, that's where a lot of lawmakers are. And that's a way, sending form letters is powerful because they have to track like how many people reached out to me about this. But engaging on social media is another way for them to see there are a lot of people talking about, publicly funded childcare. That's something I should care about. And then engaging with local media. So kind of using that communications as a tool to move forward our advocacy. And so I'm going to play this video if I can. Again, I'm also not great with tech. So let's see if I.
Scores of families came on May 18th. Scores of families came to the Ohio State House to make.
I'm going to restart it and turn on my photo. So just for some context, as Yvonne said, we just hosted the launch of what we're calling our Family Action Network. This was a long way in the making, and it started before I joined the organization. I just kind of jumped in headfirst to this, large scale event that we were planning. So part of the work that Groundwork does is really trying to amplify family voice. So a lot of decisions that are being made at our State House aren't being done with the best interest or the voices of families involved in that process. And so we've built this Family Action Network. Right now we have about 60 families from across the state who really are diverse in every sense of the word. I believe 40% of our families are families of color, and then a large percentage of them also are looking at lower socioeconomic status. So really making sure that we are representative of our state in the families that we're bringing to the table. So we had a day at the State House where we brought together these 60 families along with 40 other community ambassadors who represented communities from across the state. And we kind of took over the State House. We hosted a panel discussion with policymakers talking about why family voice matters. And then we brought our legislators to have lunch with our families. So we had, you know, lawmakers grabbing a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and sitting down with the family, and it was fun. This is the way the State House should be. So I'm going to play this video to kind of give you an idea of what the day looks like.
On May 18th, scores of families came to the Ohio State House to make their voices heard. They brought their babies, toddlers, and preschoolers because they want Ohio to be the best place to be a young child. Too often, families don't have a seat at the table when laws are being made. This was a day for them to celebrate, to share their concerns with lawmakers, and to tell their stories.
Hello, Discover Card here to explain our cashback match.
I'm
We
sorry.
match all of the cash.
That was not supposed to happen. This is not an advertisement for a credit card. Okay, so that was just an example, a large scale example of some of the advocacy work that we do. It is not always big flashy advocacy days. Sometimes it's, you know, sitting down with a lawmaker and bringing a family with us to share their story. Sometimes it's creating a toolkit so people can, you know, amplify their voices on social media. But that's an example of kind of the momentum that those small actions can really culminate in a large scale, really amplification of people's voices in policy. So these last few slides are just some of the tools that we have on our website. So we do, you know, letters to the editor. We have a blog that kind of shares, you know, different people, early childhood professionals or families or folks who work in the maternal and young child health space. And then we also have like an action toolkit where we can do letter writing campaigns that send emails directly to specific targets in the State House. So I can, our website has all these resources here, as well as some other videos that we've created about our work. So my email is on this slide. Definitely encourage folks to reach out. We are really kind of gearing up for the state budget now, even though it doesn't happen until the really end of the year, start of the new year. But that's where a lot of our advocacy happens, is really geared towards that state operating budget process. So I will stop sharing my screen and turn it back to Yvonne.
Thank you, Erin. This is wonderful. Again, a deeper look at some of the resources that are available for us. And Groundwork is one of the leading statewide child advocacy organizations in Ohio. So we really appreciate Erin being here. And I know that advocacy days, as Erin mentioned before, I know advocacy days is a lot of work, and it's a grander opportunity for us to really have the attention and the ear of our lawmakers. But like Erin and Hope both said about, and even you heard from Susan and Tracy, that the advocacy piece is extremely important. And on May 18th, they did take over the State House. There were so many little people running around there with the t-shirts on. It was a really, really awesome day to see our lawmakers just in a space where they are really listening to families. They're incorporating some of these ideas and opinions so that we can make smart policies. And we need to pass policies that really connect with families, not those from other settings. So thank you, Erin, for that. Appreciate this overview. And I just want to give a shout out to Jenny Border, who also informed us in the chat. If you weren't aware, she shared, or was shared with us, was the Disability Empower Her Network. So check out the information. I think the link is also in the chat, as well as the Kelly's Kitchen. So we'll try to capture some of that information because it sounds like it's quite aligned with what we've already been talking about today. So now we have a little bit more time. Like to move into some questions. Please, again, if you have additional questions, put it in the chat. I fear that the 5 questions that we kind of put together for our panelists, they've already done a really great job in their presentations of addressing them. But one of the things I do want to bring to our attention is just how are we serving families during this pandemic? Many of us, we know that we've had to either expand certain services. We had to do some things to adjust to make sure that, again, we're still honoring the people that we serve. So let's talk a little bit about the pandemic, and what are you seeing a little differently? What are some ways that we need to be aware of that might match services with the pandemic and keeping our families not only healthy and safe, but making sure that they have access to those services? At this time, I will just open it up to any of our panelists who may want to talk a little bit about some of these challenges during the pandemic and what your organization has been doing to support Ohioans.
So Yvonne, I'll just open it up. I'll start. So in March of 2020, I think it was 2020, it seems so long ago now, we geared up right away. We knew that our constituents, the folks that we serve, our customers would need information on COVID and COVID benefits. And basically we knew that it had to be in real time because we believe in meeting our users where they are and their needs. And we have obviously a lot of data to support that. So we kind of try to anticipate. And then, so we were kind of data geeks in that way. We watch our data every week, actually, and sometimes daily, depending on what we're looking at. So since about March of 2020, and obviously we're relatively new, so we served about 1 million folks. If you think about March 2020 to, let's say, March of 2022, we served 1 million folks during that time. The patterns that we saw are patterns that folks all saw, right? We saw tremendous increases to our information on SNAP benefits, right? And connecting folks. So we have all the local food banks geolocated. So we literally connected folks and so they could find and connect with their local food bank. But as you folks might think, unemployment was our #1 accessed information module. And what we tried to do there was we tried to work with relationships that we already had with ODJFS to make sure that we anticipated information so that we had information up, but sometimes ODJFS couldn't get that information up as quickly on their website as we could, right? And so we would take that information, make sure that information was available for folks. So, it was all core needs of low-income folks. About 75% of the folks that are on our site are below 200% of federal poverty. We know that in our data. We also know that women were disproportionately impacted as communities of color were with respect to the pandemic. About 55% of our users are women, and we know that. And then we know, because I know this is ours, right? We know that actually about 60 to 70% of our traffic comes from the 10 most populous counties in Ohio, because I can also track that geodata. So what we're trying to do is anticipate the needs. We kind of have an 80-20 rule. And so what we're trying to do is anticipate the needs of the majority of the folks that we serve. What we're seeing now is what everyone I think is feeling in their pocketbooks right now. We're seeing a lot of economic instability in our numbers, right? So we stood up a coronavirus stimulus check page, right? The economic impact page, because boy, it got complicated fast, right? And so we wanted to make sure we had good plain language 6th to 8th grade level information about how to access those benefits. And so we see kind of ebbs and flows, boy, but we've seen an upsurge within this last quarter going to that page because folks are hurting. Folks are wanting cash benefits of some kind. And so we've seen a surge to that. So what we do is when we see that, we have to tell folks, sorry, there's not a cash stimulus right now, right? Some states took some of those dollars that they had from CARES and ARPA and did state level stimulus. We're not. And so we try to get folks to other benefits. So we've been really pushing the child tax credit during the tax season, right? And now we're trying to push other things. We're trying to make sure that they're updating their Medicaid information. So we try to anticipate needs by looking at traffic because we literally have, 15,000 plus unique users on our site, 80,000 visits a month. And so we're trying to drive those eyeballs to what we think is critically important information. And so I think what we've tried to do is anticipate the needs of our core audience. And what we do is we get great information from you folks on the ground that tell us trends that are going on the ground. And so that's why I love meetings like this and connecting with folks. But then I also have literally tens of thousands of pieces of data that I'm seeing, on a monthly basis. And we look at that as well. And we're also glad to share out that information with folks. We share it out right now, but we'd love to share that information so that we can work all better together to serve the core communities that we serve.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, another kind of some good buzzwords is anticipating the need. I absolutely love anticipating the need because we do know, even Advocates for Ohio's Future, as Hope mentioned, just offered a sign-on for many of us around the COVID cliff, because we're trying to anticipate what's going to happen when many of us are no longer receiving those federal dollars to continue to serve Ohioans throughout COVID. And so what happens next? And we need to anticipate those additional needs. One of the things I'm sure we just most certainly didn't anticipate, and we have an expert in the room around this, is the infant formula shortage. And as I mentioned before, Hope has been a rock star in Ohio in this space and helping to pull together not only what is happening throughout the Biden administration, but locally. When we think about the counties that we serve and the people in our communities, what can we do to help direct them to those spaces of access and services? So Hope, did you want to talk a little bit more about where we are now, not only just in the state, but even on the federal level, so that people can still understand how we can address these issues for our families?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can start, I'll end on infant formula, but I wanted to piggyback a little bit on Susan. So what happened at the beginning of the pandemic is obviously super unprecedented, right? Like there was new programs created to try to meet the need on the federal level. And those folks and our folks, didn't know how to implement those programs because again, they were unprecedented. So things like the pandemic EBT program for children. So that kind of rolled out, for example, from on the federal level, but every state kind of implemented that program differently. And so in our state, for example, we worked alongside the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, as well as the Ohio Department of Education, to ensure that families, for example, wouldn't have to apply for the pandemic EBT program. So in other more similarly conservative states, but I guess like the advocates there weren't able to forego the application, for example. So when it comes to the pandemic EBT benefits, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with that program, but it was essentially a program that gave money to families because of missed school meals due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so families were entitled to this money. It was approved that every school age children with these circumstances should receive this money. But there were certain states where even though, you shouldn't have to do anything for the money, that you had to fill out an application, opt in, if you will. And so we worked, for example, to ensure that the money just went directly to families without having to opt in, because if you have to opt in, there's going to be a large population that doesn't opt in because they didn't know how, and then they just miss out on the money that they were entitled to. So that was an example of something that we did to work alongside ODJFS and ODE to ensure that program ran smoothly. And in fact, we were highlighted in many national articles for having one of the best pandemic EBT programs in the country. So when we talk about advocacy, sometimes laws pass, but they don't know how to implement them, or the government and bureaucrats, from Washington and Columbus, they pass something, but and with a certain intention, but there's so many intricacies and nuances that nobody really thought about. So there's, in certain states, they want you to apply for money that you're entitled to and that didn't necessarily even ask for to begin with. And that doesn't make sense. And so we're trying to make things as easy as possible for families. And the SNAP, the enhanced SNAP benefits, I think Susan touched on this a little bit as well. Throughout the pandemic, most SNAP families have been receiving the maximum allotment. Well, what does that mean? And how do we make sure that people are getting what they're supposed to be getting? And so that is something that we have been trying to navigate, keep everybody informed, and keep keep it on our radar, and trying to make sure that we're communicating with the people that do serve people. We like to say that we serve people who serve people, because we know that if you are directly working with clients, it's unlikely that you have the time, the capacity, the resources to track what's happening in Washington, what's happening in Columbus, and what's happening at your city council, and how that's going to impact your clients. So we like to take everything that's happening, digest it, and say, okay, your client is entitled to this, and they should not be, kicked off a SNAP because of XYZ. And this is what the law says, and this is what, this is what this legislation would do. So we try to navigate that so that those actually working, like Legal Aids is a really good partner of ours, for example, that work directly with clients, and they'll come tell us, if that XYZ bill passes in the State House, then they're wanting all SNAP beneficiaries to have a photo on their card, and this is what that's going to do for my clients. And it's like, okay, great. Thanks for telling us that. We'll go fight them. You keep working with your clients, and, we'll meet in the middle and let us know if they need anything else. So that's kind of how we operate. And I just wanted to outline that a little bit. But when it comes to the infant formula shortage, and I'll try to keep this as brief as possible because I can talk all night. So the long and short of it is last year, there's 3 large formula manufacturers in our country. There's Abbott, which we have a big Abbott plant downtown in Columbus. And those are the makers of Similac. And Similac is the most popular formula in our country. And then there is Mead Johnson, which they make Enfamil. And then there's Gerber. And those are the 3 largest manufacturers in our country. And so late last year, one Abbott plant in Michigan had some serious issues that I think some people are going to go to jail for, if I'm being honest. There was an investigation with the FDA where there was some bacteria found, and ultimately some infants died. And 4 others were hospitalized. So ultimately they ended up shutting down that plant temporarily, though it is still shut down to this day. And so that was the largest formula manufacturer essentially in our country. It was the largest Abbott plant, but Abbott is the largest producer, like they're the biggest formula. Okay. So when that plant shut down back in February, and again, it should have been shut down in like October, but if you read the news, you'll get that, read between the lines there. But anyway, and so when that happened, Similac essentially just left shelves immediately. There was a voluntary recall. And so because of the monopoly, I guess, on formula in this country, this caused a snowball effect that I'm sure you've seen in the media at this point, where there was no Similac on the shelves. And so now every family in every state is fighting for Enfamil and Gerber, but there's much less of it because, again, Abbott and Similac were the big guys and they're out of the picture for now. So there's a lot of drama trying to figure out who's at fault and why, but really we're just trying to make sure that these babies are fed. There has been, in addition to the infants that died because of the bacteria at the Abbott plant, there's been infants hospitalized because they just can't find their formula. They have a special medical formula that's just nowhere to be found, and thus the infant is hospitalized. So it's an unprecedented crisis, truly. And I think you'll see in the media a lot of attention is being paid to the WIC program and how it works, and what is happening and why can't people have formula. There's a lot of attention being paid to why do we have a monopoly in this country on formula. There's a lot of attention being paid to the FDA and what does the inspections of these plants look like. And there's a lot of attention being paid to these WIC contracts with this formula. And so I love that WIC is getting attention because I feel like it's a program that has operated largely under the radar for generations, but I hate that this is how the attention had to be paid. And so a lot of states are kind of fumbling, trying to figure out what to do, how to articulate, but ultimately, hopefully the Abbott plant, according to the news, will be open soon, and things should be worked out with the supply chain soonish in the next couple of months. But as there's a lot of distrust with the government, with the FDA, and with Similac just generally. And so I don't know what the future of formula in this country will look like, but I don't think the response has been appropriate on the local, state, or federal level to the infant formula shortage. But I don't, unfortunately, have like any resources as to where you can find formula if any of your clients need it, but I have a lot of what not to do. And I'm very well versed on the WIC program, so I can talk extensively about that if you have very specific questions. But essentially what I'm working on at this moment when it comes to the formula shortage in Ohio is our state, unfortunately, and I work very closely with many of our state agencies, but in our state, the Ohio Department of Health administers our WIC program, and they have not been communicating effectively with the public about the formula recall shortage and what to do and what not to do. And so what I'm doing at this moment is just trying to get them, as Erin knows, to say something because they have largely left it on advocates like Erin and I to get the word out that there was a recall back in February, almost 6 months ago, that what numbers that you should be looking for on your can. Our state hasn't even communicated that very basic information. If you have a Similac can, check the bottom. And if it has XYZ on it, please throw it away. And we're also just trying, Erin and I are just trying to push, and I mean, shove the state to at least at minimum communicate what is happening. So I have many details. So if you have very specific questions, please, please, please ask, but I don't want to take up all the time.
No, I think this is very important. Thank you, Hope and Susan, for at least answering the first part of this question, because again, one of the reasons why we do it is exactly what Hope said. Like we want to be a service to those who serve. And so this conversation is so important because oftentimes, even as professionals, we can live in certain, locations and bubbles where we don't understand some of the barriers that still exist for the people that we serve. And so it is important that we're all having this dialogue. Because if we, like Hope said before, we can't take things to legislators if we don't know how it's actually impacting the people that we serve. So I want to also pass the baton to Erin and Tracy, because one of the things that we know for sure about people with, little folks that they're taking care of, as well as people with disabilities, is that this pandemic has created and widened the hardships from those families, trying to not only survive through the pandemic and make sure you have access to resources, but childcare is so important. And then let's think about people with disabilities and how we have always, as a society, have not been very inclusive. And now that we have more tools ready available and eDiversity is leading the way and giving that access, I wanted to throw it over to Erin and Tracy to talk maybe a little bit more about, again, looking at the people that you're serving, how can, throughout the pandemic, are there some other things that we need to be aware of so that as a community, we're working together to make sure that those families are being served. So Erin and Tracy, did you also want to kind of chime in there?
Yeah, I would like to, Yvonne. I think this is a great point that you're making about the impact of the pandemic, right? And so as we've all seen, and we had no idea how impactful the COVID-19 virus would be on our lives globally, right? So it changed everything. It changed the way we did everything, even the things that we thought were almost, we were on autopilot about, it changed it all. And so one of the things that we've been able to do, again, with the Empowering Reach Out eDiversity News, is focus on some of the topics that really help bridge the gap for individuals with disabilities. And one of those focus areas has been technology. We're sitting on Zoom today, really doing something that we could have done certainly in person, but I do feel, and let me commend you, Yvonne, Sharon, and the entire Hours Network, that this is a vibrant activity, even though we're using technology, right? So it speaks to how we've all sort of raised our level of awareness around how technology can be used to help us achieve our goals. And so what we did with the eDiversity News in the month of March, I was just checking to make sure I got my months right, but our toolkit focused on technology. And one of the things we wanted to make sure of, and again, you can access this online, but we wanted to make sure that people understood how vital technology is for individuals with disabilities, because not only does it enable them to have much more of a fluid interaction with service providers and others through assistive technologies and those kinds of things that they can use, but it also creates ways for service providers to become more personal and get into their homes. So if you look at our toolkit, for example, we provided some information in the month of March related to types of assistive technologies mapped with types of impairments, right? So that service providers could think about, so that caregivers could think about different types of technologies that could help their loved ones, that could help people that they serve, and really think about the kinds of needs that maybe technology could serve that people weren't really aware of. The other piece that we've been trying to do is help empower those, as I think Hope said earlier, those who are delivering services, and to make sure that they think about how they wrap around what they do so that individuals with disabilities are able to access. And so one of the other tools that we found to be very helpful, and we've gotten a lot of feedback on, is around ways to accommodate individuals with disabilities. So we have tools that talk about equitable design in the workplace. So when, now that we are sort of transitioning back into offices and into locations, how to design things differently. One of the other things, and I'll just sort of leave it here, is that services are actually being provided via technology. And so there are some remote access ways that service providers can know what's going on in the home with the individuals with disabilities. We've just found that this use of technology really has raised the level of access for individuals with disabilities and helped them really to helped other people think more broadly about the outcomes, right? What it is we're trying to accomplish, and think about how we can use technology to bridge those gaps. And I think it has created a lot more confidence. It's created a lot more, I think, a lot more intention for the individual who has a disability to say, I don't have to feel like I can't get it. Let me figure out what's the bridge in order for me to get it. So we have found that technology has been particularly useful for individuals with disabilities. And our newsletter in the month of March will give you some of those details in our toolkit.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Erin?
Yeah, and I'll just jump in. I'll be brief. We all know that the damage that the pandemic has done to our childcare system, which was already, underinvested in, under-resourced, underappreciated long before the pandemic happened. And then this just kind of pushed it to the brink. And with groundwork, that that was an issue that we always advocated for, and really were working on making sure childcare was more accessible, affordable, and high quality for the families we served. And then with the pandemic, we had to completely shift and just talk about the basic ability for people to know what to do with their kids when childcare shut down. And we saw, kids with special needs who weren't able to get those services that they were provided in their childcare settings. And we saw families who were forced to leave their jobs because they couldn't access childcare and they couldn't balance, if they had to be in the office. And if they're working from home and working with a child there is not, you can't do that. Like, it's impossible. And so Groundwork as an organization really did a lot of leadership work in terms of bringing together those childcare providers and professional voices to do some, collaborative advocacy. We did a lot of webinar series where we were just getting information sharing out to folks. And then we've done some work around, there's a study committee in the State House on publicly funded childcare and Step Up to Quality. And we've done a lot of work. We're actually testifying next week, just kind of giving, setting the framework of it in terms of childcare. It's going to take investment. There's no magical solution that our lawmakers are trying to look for. It is investment, and it is sustained and committed and increased funding from our state, from federal, from business partners, from every stakeholder, to really make childcare a sustained system. Because right now it's moms who are disproportionately the ones who we're building our systems on. I saw a quote during the pandemic that the rest of the country has social safety nets and the US has moms. And so in terms of the advocacy work we've done, we've really been listening to our childcare providers and to the families that are part of the Family Action Network. And throughout the conversations with the State House Day we did, there was no advocacy agenda. We didn't tell families, hey, you need to talk about X, Y, and Z. We basically said, talk about what matters to you. And childcare was a thread throughout every single family conversation that was had. It is a building block to everything. And so we're in this place right now where childcare has been pushed to the brink. A lot of centers closed during the pandemic. They're not going to reopen, having a hard time finding sustained work because there's the benefits, the pay, the treatment, the value from our society is just not there. And so we're really facing this crisis in terms of saying childcare is a public good. It is something that our government should invest in because it helps kids. It's good for healthy development and socialization and just for our kiddos, but also for the parents who rely on it to be in the workforce. And so we've done a lot of work in terms of like trying to assemble very quickly with the pandemic of focusing largely on childcare. And again, with the state budget, we're going to continue to do some work there in terms of making sure kids with special needs have the services and investment that they need, trying to increase eligibility for publicly funded childcare because the threshold where it's at right now, especially with inflation, it's not sustainable. There are so many more families who need access to publicly funded care and supports who just aren't able to access it. And so this isn't an issue that only impacts folks with low incomes. It is across the board. But in terms of the advocacy that we try to do, we try to focus on the most marginalized and impacted groups of looking at families of color, specifically Black families, looking at families with low incomes or who are in part-time work, looking at families in rural areas who we don't have like big childcare centers. And really looking at folks who hold those multiple identities and starting there because it'll kind of affect folks across the board, and really making sure that we're looking at childcare as something that is good for everyone and that is good for our state. And it's really about the future of us as a state and making sure that lawmakers are taking action and putting the money where the mouth is. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Erin. I think I grossly undersold this event because the information and all of the connections is absolutely amazing. As you all know, our agencies serve about 56% of Ohio's low-income families at or below the federal poverty level. When I think about the child care, obviously we graduate about 3,000 young people from Head Start every year. Some of the ways that HOPE and the Center for Community Solutions is making sure that we're digesting some of the legislation really kind of helps us too, because we have to think about workforce development. We're thinking about housing. As Susan mentioned before, the website, it speaks to many of the constituents that we're already serving. And then Tracy, I mean, there's no area that our agencies, they're not covering people with disabilities. So this really could have been, I told you it was a master class. So I grossly undersold this. There's a lot of opportunities for us to be able to not only stay connected, but let's do a few follow-ups. There's a couple of ideas that we'd love to try to massage out. One of the things with HOPE, we would like to learn more about HOPE's ideas on reforming WIC. She's absolutely correct. It has been one of the most under-recognized, and superiorly excellent services. I remember in my young single mom days being able to access WIC. I'm not happy to say this, but at the time I was living in a housing that was less developed. My son developed lead poisoning. And at the time, WIC, we were able to get peanut butter and milk and things like that. And I don't know if you know this, but peanut butter is a good agent of, fighting lead poisoning. And, my son is awesome. The investment in Head Start, awesome. Again, he's graduated from college. So all these things that we're talking about, I remember being a recipient of some of those things. Erin, again, quality childcare for all families. How do we make sure that we can get access? And we want to, again, expand this conversation. Susan has allowed us to be a part of some of the fillers on the website, because like she said before, when people go there, we want to give them those magic words. We want to give them the resources so that they feel empowered to be their own advocates. And of course, I want you all to, go to the eDiversity, get on that connection. So maybe there's a chance for us to broaden these conversations. I know HOPE does a lot of blogging. There's a lot of great information on each one of their websites. So I hope that we can do a little bit of follow-up here. With the last couple of minutes left, I'd like to give each of our panelists maybe another opportunity to share, something else, another highlight, something to look forward to, again, anticipating the need. What else is out there that we really need to pay attention to? If you have about another minute that you would like to share something else that we need to we need to pay attention to as providers. And any of our panelists.
Hey there, it's Tracy. I will start. I wanted to first say I had my hand raised because when Aaron talked about children with special needs, so I actually am the mother of a 7-year-old girl who has special needs. And thanks, Sharon. And I will say that your point is so well taken about the childcare piece. And she's actually 7, she'll be turning 8 in the fall. And so she's moving out of that early childhood phase. But, you know, it is actually becoming more critical. So, you know, as a proponent of diversity and that diversity graphic and all the different vectors that come together for any one of us, right? There's so many components and dimensions of diversity. And, you know, one of the things that I have learned just being her mother, right? Not because I was ever an advocate before, but you become an innate advocate, right? Once you become a parent. And I found that people don't think about what it will take, like what that continuum looks like. And so it is definitely a transition for other people to think about the various gates that children go through. And when you lay on top of that disability and lay on top of that she's Black and lay on top of that she's a girl, it really does make me very aware, and it makes me approach these systems and these service providers differently about where she is in her journey. And that's very different than where, you know, another child is, right? So I think your point is so well taken, Aaron, that people need to really think about the constituent and what they need and where the convergence of those, you know, those various diverse characteristics put them at whatever juncture that you meet them. So this is amazing. I will answer Yvonne's question and just wrap with saying thank you. Thank you to ours. Thank you, Yvonne and Sharon. And thank you to all of these amazing panelists. As I said in the chat, I have a reason to contact every single person that presented. So I look forward to emailing you and connecting you with Dr. Patricia Larkins Hicks, who is the president of the Outcomes Management Group and the purveyor of the newsletter. We all work together to curate content. I will share that in the month of June, our topic is going to be community outreach. And so I'll be talking to Dr. Hicks about the wonderful organizations that have been featured here. We already know ours. Yvonne and Pat are already friends, but I will talk to her about these organizations, talk to her about some of the things we're looking to do. And I will share that one of the things you may hear from me is the focus that we want to put on all of the counties around the state of Ohio. So I talked about empowering individuals across the state. One of the things we are looking to do with this newsletter is to make sure that we bring in and feature people across the state that are doing these things well, that are reaching these communities well. Anyone that you know that may not be in Franklin or may not be in Montgomery or some of the larger counties, but we want to feature them in the newsletter. So if there's a way that we can know what you're doing, feel free to email me. I did put my email in the chat, and look out for more information. I will be reaching out and figuring out how we might integrate some of you in our June, which is going to be about community outreach.
Thank you, Tracy. Tracy, are you in DC full time? Tracy, are you in DC full time?
Lived in Columbus for 7 years.
But you are in DC?
I am in DC,
Okay.
but Dr.
All right.
Hicks is in Columbus, and the Outcomes Management Group is focused there, where we connect directly with ODDC.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to say really quickly, thank you to everyone. Also, 3 quick things. Ohio Legal Help will be launching its full Spanish language website very quietly in late August, early September. And so that is essentially our entire website, basically translated into Spanish language. And then we're launching a complaint intake process with the NAACP of Cleveland, the Cleveland branch. And so we'll be doing that, we think, sometime in the month of July. And then we have a bunch of other product launches, but one module that might be of interest to this group is we got funding to do a mobile first legal information module on youth and foster law, like young adults, focusing on their needs and really trying to understand and we've been working with a wonderful advisor group of young adults who are telling us this is what resonates, because we want to make sure the language resonates. And so there's just some things that we'll be launching over the summer.
And I'll jump in. As I said, the Child Care Study Committee, which is in the State House right now, it is, there's some lawmakers on that committee who co-chair it and serve on it, but it's also has appointed members of the committee who are part of administrative departments or, you know, folks who work in the early childhood space in the communities. And so they're having their last committee hearing this upcoming Wednesday. And then they're going to break and through the summer work on recommendations. And so the recommendations coming out of the committee are not like bills that are going to have actions tied to them. They're recommendations that they're making to the legislature and to the governor to take action on. And so we're really making sure that there is action behind those recommendations that actually serve to improve publicly funded childcare and step up to quality system. Really making sure that we're protecting quality within childcare. And so there may be some actions that we're really gearing up for as those recommendations come out, amplifying them, pushing our lawmakers to take action on them. And the last piece I'll say is we're going to be doing a mom and babies tour. I think throughout the summer, dates are kind of up in the air right now, but we're going to be doing some work really around our prenatal to 3 advocacy and policy work, and kind of doing a tour across the state, really working with folks in communities. And so I know that we'll have some days where we are in the Northeast Ohio area. I'm actually from the west side of Cleveland, so I'm excited to get back in Cleveland and to connect with folks there. So more details on that coming, and would love if there's folks who are in those different communities where we're coming to connect with you all and make sure that you're a part of those days as well.
I think the last thing I'll say very, very quickly is that, and as Yvonne said numerous times, is that a lot of pandemic programming is coming to an end, though the pandemic is not. And so just be very cognizant of the impending COVID cliff is what we're calling it. Again, a lot of our programming will end abruptly soon. And it's going to impact a lot of people in very rough ways, and a lot of people will be in a very rough place. And so I encourage you to just we call it the public health emergency unwind, we call it the COVID cliff, but there again, we're in unprecedented times, and there's some severe cliffs that are coming for families. So I just encourage you to try to stay in the know as much as you're able on that, because it's gonna hurt.
This is amazing. Thank you. Yes. So we got our action steps. Please sign on to all of the newsletters. All of the organizations have great websites. You can always check back with ours. We will send some post-event materials with information. I know I'll be at the State House next week because Aaron just reminded me. I know I got to be paying attention to the COVID cliff. There's a lot that we need to pay attention to. We got the upcoming complaint product. So listen, a lot of great information today, a lot of great takeaways. Please, like I said before, sign on, stay connected so that we can continue to serve the best of our Ohioans. And thank you so much to our presenters. If y'all can do spirit fingers with me, this is our way we clap virtually, just say thank you to all of our presenters, because man, this was absolutely an amazing start to the weekend. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.